What's up guys, hope everyone is doing well. In this video I'm going to be going over some updates for XYO, but nonetheless going to get it started. The first chart I want to go over here is the daily. Now obviously at this point XYO has not been doing the best, which I mean basically everything hasn't been doing the best, especially within the last week or so with the stock market data that has come in along with the tariffs and all the other socio-political and other macroeconomic factors into play. But at this point XYO is down 83.26%. Now, again, I want to stress, which is a point I've brought up many times in the past videos, that, for example, going back and looking at the past bull market, looking at other altcoins, more notable altcoins such as Phantom, which is now known as Sonic, and plenty of others that I've mentioned in the past. In the last bull market, as they're going up in their bull run, once it reaches about like that mid, roughly to 2/3 area, something like Phantom had seen, 80, 90%, anywhere from around, 50 upwards towards 80, 90% corrections for altcoins, the viable ones more specifically, and a bull run is not out of the norm, and it's not something which is ultimately going to completely wreck and end the bull run for it, because something like Phantom and the others that I've mentioned in past videos or posts on X, even despite having those 80 upwards to 90% corrections, midway or so into a bull run, still went on afterwards to make significant and sizable gains towards the upside. So really that is, again, just a main point that I have. There's not too much to update technically. I mean, everything just doesn't particularly look the greatest. Now, I don't say that to say that, I think XYO is done with this bull run. I think Bitcoin is done with this bull run. I still personally think that Bitcoin has one more leg up. I still personally think that at the very least, the viable altcoins that have genuine utility and real-world use case, which would be something like XYO, still have yet to see the best performance in the current bull run. Now, within the last, roughly 8 to 12 hours, we can see here with Bitcoin that it has moved back down to the horizontal lows here, sitting somewhere approximately 77.5. Now, at this point, we could just see another horizontal local low here. Bitcoin bounces up, continues to go higher. Maybe it's just going to sit sideways for another period of time, or maybe it's going to even go lower down towards 74, 72, maybe even down to around 70,000 approximately with some wicks or something of that nature, which I mentioned in recent Bitcoin videos. But Bitcoin is down. Obviously, if you look here at the SPX with the stock market, because this is playing a big factor as well, it's having its most drastic move down since, for example, going back to like beginning of 2022, beginning of 2020, leading into the Black Thursday of March, or associated with the pandemic. I mean, it'll be comparable somewhat to your October 2018 as well. When it comes to the daily decreases and pullbacks that for example, the SPX or the other indices saw, what we've seen recently is actually, I can't remember specifically if it's worse at this point. It might be worse, but I know that it was essentially equivalently comparable to the drastic daily drawdowns that was seen back leading into March of 2020 and Black Thursday and everything that was going on in the world back then. But still, despite this downturn, we could totally see the SPX come into this 50 EMA band and bounce just like it did here, and ultimately here, and it's done for, many years at this point, going all the way back to here 2008, 2009, after that significant crash, which, that could not be the case. Maybe we're going to see a very significant dump, maybe down to the 200 EMA here, or even lower, as one of the things I've been pointing out for a couple of years, due to various data points that have come in, that I think it's quite likely, which is something I still generally lean to, that within the current decade or so, we'll see I think likely quite a significant downturn in the traditional stock market, which I don't particularly think will translate into Bitcoin per se, but with what Bitcoin is doing here, it might, with this move that we've seen here for the SPX towards the downside. Now, if we go to the daily and just look at this, you can clearly see how drastic of a downside this has been so far. So, and it's very oversold right now, sitting around 27. Look here at Bitcoin, it's been holding up fairly well. So what we could be seeing here is, a move for Bitcoin down towards, maybe the $70,000 region here. And that's where it's going to bottom out at. We're seeing Bitcoin lag a bit behind what has been going on in the stock market. But again, for XYO, that is really an important precedent. Obviously, what Bitcoin is doing is going to be important for XYO and all other altcoins, and clearly the traditional stock market, such as the SPX and the other indices, are going to be important because those have been, up until now, with some exceptions here and there, highly correlated with what Bitcoin does. So as long as Bitcoin is going to continue to go down, which really, again, is another one of the main points that I am still standing by right now, as long as Bitcoin is going down or going sideways, we're going to see XYO doing the same thing, and more likely than not, to a worse degree. Now, as I said, at this point, XYO is down around, what was it, 83? I think it's even gone down a bit more since I did that. So 83.31%. I mean, if it goes down to 90%, then that's going to push it back down to around 0.047, which would put it back down somewhere around this region right here. We zoom out a little bit more, we could see how that would line up with roughly this region right here, which would be grounds for some support to be found in there, obviously, with this price action here, and then leading into this right here where we had this deviation when the still bottom was set, and then led up into the most recent local high up to around 4.5 cents. The daily RSI, if we look here, is down in the orange region, which would be the Fibonacci levels 1.137 and 197, and you can see each time, for example, the bear market low was met in here, and then it moved up to around $0.015. Leading into March 2024, it was met here, and then there's around let's say double or triple bullish divergence met as the price continued to go lower. Then it went up to 4.5 cents. So at this point, I mean, clearly, as I mentioned, we could continue to see XYO go lower. Now, if it starts to go lower and lower and lower and go below, let's say, these prior local lows, that's obviously not going to look too good. For example, if we think about something like Matic, which I'll pull that up here quickly, it looks absolutely terrible for being one of the coins that performed better than a lot of them and actually having a genuine use case in the last bull market. As you can see here, is quite a nice vertical with little pullbacks towards the upside run here, and we can see that it is one of the, especially if you're segmenting off, again, like I said, kind of the viable altcoins, it just looks absolutely horrendous. It's broken through this horizontal support that was held since March of 2021. So, this maybe Matic's just not going to have, a significant or sizable bull run and go past the prior all-time high here. Maybe it'll just come up and do something like XRP did around the last time and just kind of continue to go sideways and then come back down for a bear market. Or maybe it's just going to die. Who knows? I would have to be lent towards the notion that it's probably gonna, maybe go back up more likely than not, because it's still a, viable altcoin in terms of use case. But I bring this up just because, let's say we see XYO do something like this and come back down, maybe not necessarily to the absolute bear market low, or just rather something along these lines where it meets this range right here, as I mentioned, and then it bounces upwards. I don't necessarily think that's the end of the world. Again, that's a 90% retracement, which has happened with viable altcoins. For example, in the past bear market that I brought up, or the past bull market that I brought up, yet they continue to still go on to make new all-time highs and sizable, significant gains afterwards. The fact that it's insanely oversold right here is quite nice to see. There is, if we look at the RSI specifically, you can see here with the descending support here for the price, the RSI at this point is, where it currently stands, if it were to bounce here and continue to go upwards, would be a minor, kind of like a watered down bullish divergence. But at this point, it's borderlining being an exaggerated bullish divergence, and also it might even go lower, which would invalidate that. If we look here at the stock RSI, there's more of a noticeable bullish divergence building up. Same thing can be said here for the MACD, which has been building up, as you can see here, the entire time that the price has been going down, which also could be, as soon as Bitcoin can get its act together, whether or not the stock market is going to continue to go lower or get its act back together and go up along with Bitcoin. I mean, obviously that is assuming Bitcoin hasn't actually topped out and the bull market all-time high was indeed under 9,000. Obviously, I can't know that. Nobody can know that. So, again, at the end of the day, this is all just speculation. If we look here at the RVI again, similar to the stock RSI, there's more of a noticeable bullish divergence potentially building up here, unless we just see it tank off back down to the lows, which at that point it would be an exaggerated bullish divergence, but I guess that would just be a weaker one. Again, this would be similar on the ASO, more so to what was going on with the RSI. here. The ASO is on the daily here is over, it's more oversold than it was back when XOO set its bear market low. It is just as oversold as it was when XYO was in this downtrend here, where those double or triple bullish divergence, depending upon how you look at it, was formed, and then eventually it went up. So again, say there's roughly two scenarios here. Again, if Bitcoin continues to go down, maybe we'll see XYO come down towards the 005, 006 area. Maybe even seeing some wicks down to the around 0045 or so, worst case scenario. And then obviously assuming it's going to pick back up, it'll pick back up and go upwards from there, along with, again, assuming the same for Bitcoin. Or again, we could see maybe these bullish divergences on these various indicators I was pointing out. Maybe we'll see Bitcoin, or XYO here rather, kind of stagnate here. Maybe it's got a little bit lower to go. It'll go sideways for a bit and then bounce up. Obviously, there's plenty of different ways this could unfold and play out, but at this point, it's still very important to get above right here, which is around where the 200 estimated moving average and 50 estimated moving average are. So, which is going to be anywhere really at the top, which is the most important, to be around 0.13, so about a penny and a third of a penny. And then obviously this horizontal zone here, which is just approximately let's just say 2 to 2.5 cents, where it was rejected each of these times here down to what the price has done in downtrend up until now. So again, those, it's not changed. That still looks the same. If you look here at the weekly, gone below the 786 here, getting closer and closer to the bottom of this all-time inside pitchfork here, where last time around this massive double bottom was set, whereas this time around we've seen such set here. Now we're coming back down to the bottom. Again, the question is whether or not the bull market, is it over? Is it not over? Again, I still think that there is the best yet to come for the viable altcoins. If you look here at the Stoch RSI, you can see that it is more oversold than when it was XY was at the all-time lows of the prior bear market. It is encroaching upon being as oversold as it was when it was back here in this range, as it was going downwards, leading into 4.5 cents. Yet, from the prior bottom of the bear market, it's up around 160 towards 200%. So, I mean, that's a relatively bullish sign to see. Yet the price being higher here, Stoch RSI being more oversold. We look here at the MACD, it's as oversold as it's been since going back to May of 2022. This entire sideways action here, which encompasses this entire price action here. Yet the price is higher here. Again, like I said, somewhere around like 150 to 200%. Yet the MACD is quite drastically more oversold. Again, that's going to be generally a bullish sign. If we look here at the RVI, it's more oversold than this entire territory here. It's more oversold than the entire range low for the bear market bottom. It is actually the third. It's basically tied for second most oversold that it's been throughout this entire portion of price action that we see here. There's also some potential bullish divergence forming here, where the price is going lower. So that could also come into effect here for the weekly chart, maybe playing it along with what I mentioned on the prior daily chart. Continuing to move up here and perhaps meeting these zones upwards towards the all-time high range around 50 cents to $2.30 at highest. Most recently, again speaking, it could go far higher than that. If you look at the circulating supply and think about market capitalization, it definitely could go far higher than that. But this range here, around 50 cents to $2.30, is not only in terms of market capitalization reasonable, but also for various points of technical analysis that I've gone over more so briefly in this video, but more in depth in past videos, is backed up by not only the market cap math, but also technical analysis and its various data points. If you look here for the last XYO chart, before I jump into looking at like the Bitcoin dominance, the others chart, and the others dominance, you can see here for this 2-week uptrend zone, which has been intact since the local low set in August of 2024, which led up to 4.5 cents here. Right now, XYO is testing it. If we look here at the RSI, it's coming down to the 272, which is where back in January 2024, you can see here the RSI found a bounce, such as the price then found a bounce from around half a penny up to a penny and a half. Again, this factors into the temporal trend I'd been pointing out. If you look here, this was September, October 2023. XY had moved up into November, December 2023, moved down into January, February 2024, then moved up into around March of 2024. Fast forward a year later, here we're in September, October 2024. XY moves up again into November, December 2024 here, meeting 4.5 cents, then comes down, and at this point, the temporal trend, I wouldn't necessarily say it's invalidated, because again, I still think that XYO has more gains to make towards the upside, such as Bitcoin does. At this point, this last time around, the bottom was met by the beginning of February. At this point, being early April, we're around 2 months lagging behind. So let's say sometime this month, XYO finds support, just let's say somewhere in this general area, and then it bounces up towards somewhere in the green zone from the prior all-time high upwards towards around 20 cents. Then a 2-month lag, factoring that into the temporal trend, given that around mid-March is when XYO topped out here in this temporal trend, where this was the first structural move. This would be the second structural move that kind of just looks like an ABC, like a lightning bolt type pattern. Whereas the 2-month lag would factor into sometime projecting it towards late May, June, maybe even early July, where this green zone here would eventually be met. If you look here at the stock RSI, it's just a tad bit more oversold than when it was XY was down here, which again, especially with this 2-weekly uptrend zone being tested, is a good sign. It doesn't really mean anything ultimately. XY could totally, drop right below it. It could come down to around the 0.05 approximately range, which would also, again, it would line up with testing this rough zone here, and basically where this support here was found, and this support here, and again roughly this support here. So there's plenty of reasons for support to be found there if XO does continue to go lower than it currently is. That would also line up with probably seeing like a weekly or so, 2-weekly candle close below the 50 EMA band with some wicks, which again would not invalidate totally everything, such as moving up here towards the upside into this green zone or higher. But again, it could just necessarily be what XYO needs to do in order to helpfully correct and continue towards the upside. Stoch RSI is also rivaling just however what it was back at the bear market low. So again, all generally bullish signs. If you look here at the MACD, you can see there's this rough kind of this horizontal zone here, where ever since the MACD was building up here, started to flatline out in this area, which would have been right when XYO here was bottoming out, and then moving into these moves recently. You can see that this has been support for here leading into this move, and then support here leading into the move up to 4.5 cents. And now MACD's come right back down to it. So again, maybe thinking about where the RSI sits here, the state of this stock RSI, again, this 2-week uptrend zone, perhaps this could be the area where support will be found over the next month, leading into the next 4-6 months or so, leading in towards the end of this year, where we'll see XYO continue to go higher here. Now, the last thing I want to point out before I get into the final charts is something that pertains to projecting the all-time high. Now, as I pointed out on the weekly chart, this massive W here structurally points to the, or correlates with this W that we would see here. And I've gone over this pattern more in depth, looking at it on different time frames and showing the more intricate aspects of it in past videos. So I would check those out if you're interested in anything that I'm talking about or going over. But so this move here would be structurally synonymous to this move. And then this move here would be structurally synonymous to the current move we're on once it finally goes up into the green zone. So what I find interesting is if you take the percent move here, 785.91%, and then take the synonymous structural move of the next bull run, 489.39%, and divide here this second move by this first move, you get the ratio of 0.623, which is quite closely approximating the golden ratio. 618 is only 0.005 off, which I find interesting. A lot of the times when I do, especially for XYO, and I take these percentage gains ratios with respect to structural repetition and patterning from, bull cycle to bull cycle. For XYO, for other altcoins, for Bitcoin especially, a lot of times the ratios end up, when comparing structurally synonymous moves from cycle to cycle, end up a lot of times approximating Fibonacci levels, such as the 618, 382, 236, so on and so forth. So taking this ratio, this 0.623, again, approximating the golden ratio, we take that and we multiply it by this move here, 5,701%. Again, this is going to then factor into this move at its culmination, assuming it continues to go higher here and the bull market crypto wide isn't over. That would then give us a move of around 3,550%, which would put the upcoming leg right around the midpoint of this green zone, so somewhere around 14 to 15 cents. Again, where the bottom is the prior all-time high. Here, going back to 8 cents, and this upper portion would be somewhere around 20 cents. This is also with respect to Fibonacci levels that I've gone over in past videos when I take them with respect to, again, these structural moves that I'm pointing out here. So for example, one of them being, if you take the Fibonacci retracement of this first move, we see it wicked up to the 457, and the range of 272 to the 457 is what was met. If we look here, that gives us the range of around 9 cents all the way up to 14 cents, or the 618 would be around 20 cents. And there's various other ones as well that I've taken in past videos that also, again, point to this green zone here, such as this what I'm doing now, which I haven't already gone over in past videos of these ratios, is also, again, pointing to this green zone, specifically the median. Now, again, if we take this ratio, 0.623, and we multiply it by the entire bull run move here, 43,460%, that would then give us a move again. So this is starting from, this would be the first bottom here, second bottom, so we're then going to take from the second bottom here, the next iteration of the bull market, and that will give a move of 27,000, just about 27,000 on the dot, which would put XYO ending its bull market somewhere around $1.05, which again is lining up right in the middle of this zone, such as the last time I did this, again, remember, was lining up right in the middle of this green zone. Now doing it from the first bottom here would be 66,176%. Multiply that by 623, we get 41,208%, which would, again, just funnily enough, maybe this is all just coincidence, it means absolutely nothing into the day, but is taking the all-time high right back up into the median, this time a little bit higher at around $1.14, so around 10 cents higher, but still roughly within that same ballpark, where both of these, again, they're falling right at the median of both of these zones, which is validated by various Fibonacci retracements that I've gone over in past videos. It's correlated with this inside pitchfork, whereas you can see here this move moved up to the 382 to 0.25, such as if that happens again, we would see the price move up to around somewhere around at highest, maybe seeing some wicks up towards 18, 19 cents. Again, still roughly being somewhere around, let's just say 14, 15 cents up to 20 cents. Again, the green zone. And also, if we look here, the prior all-time high was around 786 towards the upper bound. So really, it's the 618 here to the upper bound, with the 786 being in the middle, which would put 786 here around $1, whereas the upper here would put it around $2. Upward starts $2.30 at highest. So again, plenty of technical data points to point to the validity of these zones, if only the bull market's not over, and also the market capitalization math is beyond reasonable, because I think the market supply, or the circulating supply, is somewhere around 13.5 billion. So if it just goes to approximately $1, that's only approximately 13.5 billion market capitalization. That's very little. If it goes towards $2, it would be somewhere around 26 billion towards 30, 35 billion, depending upon if it goes towards $2.30. But that's all for XYO. Moving in here to Bitcoin dominance to finish off this video. Still seeing this uptrend here. This macro resistance here that I've been pointing out here is being broken once more. Now this could just be the final break of this until leading into the final rejection here. There's still some bearish divergence shaping up here on the RSI with respect to the price. Obviously with Bitcoin going down and the altcoins are going to be going down more, it makes sense to see the Bitcoin dominance going up here. But again, my broader sentiment, still thinking the bull run's not over, still thinking altcoins, the viable ones at least, have seen the best yet to come. I do think eventually we'll see the Bitcoin dominance have quite a drop here, which will go below the 50% zone here. This purple line where we'll see the flip from the dominance being on Bitcoin and its shoulders to the dominance within the crypto space being more emphasized on the altcoins. But look here at the others chart. First looking at the RSI, it's right in the same levels that have acted as support since if we look here at this, zooming in, looking at this, here is a double bottom, which has then led into this current bull run. Since this second bottom here, you can see this horizontal zone roughly just somewhere in between the 197 to 272, the Fibonacci levels, where you can see it was support, retracement, support, retracement. Now we're back in those same levels. Also meeting the 200 estimating moving average again. Right now it's going a tad bit below it, and it might go below it and close, a few weekly candles below it. It doesn't really mean much because it could still totally retrace or find support and move back towards the upside. The stock RSI also insanely oversold, more oversold than it was back here at the actual bear market lows. MACD also at its most oversold point since bear market lows. RVI, again, same situation. This is really, I could say this for not only this chart, I could say this for Bitcoin on the higher time frames, and I could say this for a lot of the altcoins on the higher time frames. The fact that if you look at a lot of these indicators at their bear market lows here and compare them to where they are now, and them being drastically more oversold now as opposed to back at the bear market lows, is generally a good sign, but it's not a foolproof sign that obviously that we'll see this rapid recovery and a very strong recovery towards the upside, because obviously the bull market could totally be over at this point, and everything I'm going over is really in vain and just completely wrong at the end of the day, which, I'm open to. But so there's plenty of precedence here for the others. So this is going to be the altcoin market capitalization, really just the entire crypto space, take out the top 10. So this is as altcoin as you can get. There's plenty of reasons to see and to think that there's some bullish support here, that it looks good. If you look here at the others dominance, we are seeing this with the current weekly candle, this long-term uptrend being broken again, similar to the sentiment I had for the others market cap previously, and just generally with the altcoins and Bitcoin. I don't think that this is like a foolproof invalidation. We're just going to see a massive tank here. Maybe we'll see it straddle below this a bit for a few weeks, maybe leading into May, which, this has a lot of relevance to the Bitcoin video that I'm going to get up sometime, 12, 24 hours after this one. So if you're interested in this video and what I've been saying, I would check out that upcoming video because it will elaborate more on macroeconomic data and how that's factoring into this, and so kind of briefly what I touched on at the beginning of the video. But totally, there's still, the chance and possibility that we see this recovery here towards the upside. We are, again, quarter 1 2017, quarter 1 of 2020, every 4 years. Obviously, quarter 1's over at this point. It's still at the lows, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to over the next month or so, leading into May, which factors in with the money flow data that I've gone over plenty of times, and the lag that has with respect to Bitcoin. Again, I'm going to talk about this in the Bitcoin video. It's pointing to sometime, if this trend continues to follow and this lag comes into effect, that early May is when we'll see Bitcoin continue to go up, and then that'll also factor into the altcoins as well. But as I said, that was all that I wanted to go over and talk about and update in this video. As always, none of this is meant to be financial advice, but all that being said and everything gone over, I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Ooh, I regret now, won't die. See you forever, such a long time is what we've been through.